was a bit unfair, really. Bit unfair, really, wasn't it? Well, how often have we heard that creativity is the key to good organisation? Well, an increasing number of management initiatives are directed at getting the best creative output from employees. But it appears that most of them aren't doing what they're supposed to, and staff find the advent of new forms of communication like email, faxes and the internet just too confusing. With me now is Martin Leach, publisher of Human Resources magazine. Why do we even, Martin, need to talk about creativity and innovation? What's going wrong in the workplace that needs to be changed by using devices like that?
Well, I think that creativity and innovation, it's one of the main themes in the Human Resources Excellence Awards that I initiated 3 years ago, because a lot of what a lot of companies were finding that employees were coming up with ideas, and a lot of them weren't being acted upon. Some of them were being thrown out without being looked at. But then some companies started getting smart and acting upon some of the staff's creative thinking, and they actually found that it helped morale, productivity, and in a lot of cases, in fact, it made a difference to the bottom line. So I think in a lot of businesses, innovation and creativity are absolutely vital if companies are going to survive.
It all sounds very obvious to me, though.
It is obvious, but there are still some companies out there who don't give their staff that opportunity. And for instance, in service businesses, one of the entrants in the Human Resources Awards this year was a PR firm called Text 100, who handle Microsoft's account. And they, in fact, have a room in their business where staff can go, and it's painted in wacky colors, it's got squishy sofas, and it's a real brainstorming room. And they find that this particular room gives their staff a real opportunity to think very creatively, because that's the nature of a PR business, and come up with interesting ideas for their clients' PR campaigns.
In this world, though, that we live in, where people don't tend to work 9 to 5 anymore, they tend to work sort of 7:30, 8 until 6, 7 o'clock at night, a very long day with an enormous amount of stress and an enormous amount of work to get through. How can companies encourage employees to be that extra bit creative and that extra bit innovative when they've already got an enormous amount of work on their plate?
A lot of people like a little bit of extra money, some kind of bonus for coming up with an idea that's sometimes outside their normal job description, and others prefer recognition. So I think you've really got to find what works for your organization. Is it a pat on the back? Is it some other kind of recognition in the business? Or is it a little bonus or some time off?
I mean, this sort of motivation, one would have thought, ought to be there in the workplace anyway. Surely when you employ anybody, you would hope that they would be as creative and as innovative at their job as possible. Why have we got to a point where the Human Resource Department has to encourage people to act creatively and innovatively?
Why have we got to that point? Well, I think because a lot of people have discovered that the human resources function in the business can really affect the bottom line, the financial performance of the business. So people are starting to wake up to the fact that it can make a difference financially to the business. And it's great for morale if people are listened to and their ideas are acted upon.
We have also been made aware recently of the need for a communications role, an internal communications role within the Human Resource Department. Just to explain exactly what you mean by that and the necessity for that role.
Yeah, sure. I think NatWest is an example where the Human Resource Director there is called Human Resources and Communications Director. Keeping the staff informed about what's happening in the business internally, as well as what's happening out there in the big bad world with customers, should fall really on the desk of the human resources people, because they're there to motivate the staff, look after the staff, develop them. And so communicating with them, I see very much as a core HR function now. And more companies are amalgamating what was a PR or communications director function into the human resources department.
Now, the facility to communicate, though, certainly within industry, has advanced enormously just over the past couple of years. Internet, the email system, the CC mail system, as some people call it, faxing, mobile phones. Why then the need for a department in itself when employees, to a certain extent, are that much more accessible and ought to be communicating with each other in a much better way?
I don't think it has to be a department on its own. I mean, HR is responsible for a lot of other things apart from communication. What companies are doing is merging the two together in many, many cases. So,
is this a way of addressing the problem which I think a lot of people find in industry, whereby, I mean, this is a prime example. This is a communications environment, it's a newsroom, and yet there are people here that I probably don't speak to from one week to the next because I can email them. Now, in that respect, all of this new information technology that we have to communicate with has almost necessitated less verbal communication and a less communicative environment. How do we address that?
Well, I'll go back to an example of one of the entrants to the Human Resources Awards this year, which was this Text 100 company. They're only a small organization. They have 11 million turnover. They have, I think, 8 or 9 overseas offices. Every 2 years, they have a company meeting. This year, for example, they held it in just out of Amsterdam. And getting back to creativity, everybody was given a budget of £60 to get to this particular destination. And certain members of the team from some of their other branches around the world used very innovative ways to get there. One couple, in fact, hired a balloon from one of their clients and flew in on this, or floated in on this particular balloon to the meeting. And obviously, because it was a client, they promised they would look after their client in other ways. And here was a way of getting them to this particular meeting. I think the point is that, you know, you've got to have regular meetings with people. You can't get lost in emails and faxes and stuff like that. Text 100, bring everybody together every 2 years. You probably have to do it a bit more often than that. But I think it comes down to more face-to-face meetings whenever you can possibly have them.
The business world now, these days, is full of acronyms, and HR is just another one of those sort of acronyms that you think, oh, God, as soon as you hear the term. Although they do a tremendous job and a very important job. How do we develop the HR role from here on in? I mean, we've talked about the role of a communicator, an internal communicator, or indeed a department. But what else does HR do, and how does it develop in the future?
Well, HR needs to be more strategic. In the past, it's been a very administrative type function in businesses, form filling, dealing with absence, that kind of stuff. Nowadays, it's got to evolve into a more strategic role.